Noah Keller thought he was sharing harmless late-night texts with his favorite teacher, but Claire Donnelly was already setting a deadly trap that would end with a plan for murder. Noah Keller's life had always been quiet and carefully organized, the kind of existence that rarely drew attention. At 17, he spent most evenings in his room with a stack of novels and a laptop for schoolwork. His parents worked long hours, leaving him to his own routines, which suited him just fine. Pinewood, the suburban town he called home, was a place where people noticed little changes, where gossip spread quickly, but nothing truly exciting ever seemed to happen. That changed the day Claire Donnelly walked into Pinewood High to teach English. She was unlike any teacher Noah had ever met, stylish in a way that seemed effortless, her hair perfectly arranged, her voice warm and inviting. Students who usually dreaded literature suddenly leaned forward when she spoke, drawn in by her energy. Noah, who loved words but hated attention, found himself watching her more than he meant to, fascinated by the way she made ordinary lessons feel alive. At first, their connection seemed like nothing unusual. Claire noticed the careful detail in his essays and left handwritten notes in the margins, praising his insight. When she asked him to stay after class to discuss his work, he felt nervous but proud. Their early conversations were all about books and writing, moments that made Noah feel recognized in a way he never had before. It was flattering to have someone older, someone admired by everyone, take such interest in his thoughts. He told himself it was just a teacher appreciating a student's effort, yet a small part of him began to crave her attention. Over the following weeks, the encounters became more frequent. Claire began sending short messages about assignments, then late-night texts about novels and poetry. Noah kept his phone close, waiting for the vibration that signaled her words. Each time, his heart raced with a mix of excitement and unease. The secrecy made it feel special, like a friendship that belonged only to them. He didn't tell his friends, not even his closest ones, sensing that they wouldn't understand. When Claire complimented his maturity and told him he had an old soul, Noah felt a rush of pride. The admiration of a teacher he barely knew a month ago now felt like the most important part of his day. What he didn't realize was that this attention was not as innocent as it seemed. Hidden beneath the praise and encouragement was something calculated, a slow and deliberate pulling of strings that would draw him into a situation far beyond the quiet life he had always known. The late-night messages became a steady rhythm in Noah's life, each one arriving like a secret invitation he couldn't refuse. At first, Claire kept the conversations centered on books, quoting passages and asking his opinions on characters, but gradually her words changed. She began sending casual selfies after school, pictures of her smiling in her car or holding a coffee cup, small glimpses into her private world that made Noah feel chosen. Before long, those images carried a different tone. A slightly unbuttoned shirt, a tilt of her head, a look that lingered. They were never openly explicit at first, but they hinted at something more. Noah would stare at the screen, unsure how to respond, his pulse quickening with confusion and curiosity. Claire's messages grew more personal as well. She confided that she felt trapped in a marriage that no longer brought her joy. She said her husband, Mark, was cold and controlling, that he questioned her every move and dismissed her feelings. Her words painted a picture of a lonely woman desperate for understanding. Noah, still new to love and the complexities of adult relationships, believed her without hesitation. He imagined her sitting in a quiet house, texting him while her husband ignored her. The idea stirred both sympathy and a strange sense of importance, as if he were the only person who truly saw her. Soon, the photos became unmistakably intimate. Late at night, while the rest of the house slept, Noah would receive images that made his heart pound. Claire always added messages, telling him how special he was, how no one else made her feel alive. He knew it was wrong, but he couldn't turn away. Each message felt like a secret promise, binding them together. She told him he was different from other boys his age, that he understood things most people never would. Noah's thoughts began to revolve around her. He checked his phone constantly, waiting for the next notification. Schoolwork started to feel less important. Even his friends noticed he was distracted. Yet he told no one. He convinced himself that what they shared was private and meaningful, something others wouldn't understand. Beneath the excitement, a quiet unease started to grow, a feeling he pushed aside. Each time another message appeared. Without realizing it, Noah was being drawn deeper into a relationship that was no longer about admiration or friendship, but control. a carefully constructed trap disguised as affection. Rain slicked the streets the night Claire's messages shifted from suggestive to dangerous. Noah sat at his desk, the glow of his phone lighting the room, when she began describing how unbearable her marriage had become. She claimed Mark followed her every move, monitored her spending, and mocked her dreams. Each sentence dripped with desperation, each complaint crafted to make her husband sound like a monster. Noah read and reread the words, feeling a tug of both sympathy and dread. She never asked outright for help, but the implication was clear. Freedom, she hinted, could only come if Mark was no longer in the picture. Her trust in Noah, she said, was absolute. He was the only one who truly understood her suffering. The suggestion hung in his mind long after the conversation ended. He told himself she didn't mean it literally, that she was just venting, but the way she worded her messages made it hard to dismiss. Over the next few days, Claire's texts grew heavier. She described nights of fear, said she sometimes locked herself in the guest room to feel safe. Noah started to imagine her trapped and alone, pleading silently for someone to save her. The thought that he could be that someone filled him with a dangerous sense of purpose. He began watching Mark from a distance, convincing himself it was only to understand the situation. After school, Noah lingered near the parking lot where Mark's silver sedan often appeared. He followed once as Mark left work, heart hammering as he kept his own car several lengths behind. Mark's routine seemed ordinary, stopping for coffee, chatting with a neighbor, carrying groceries into the house. Nothing about him matched the cruel figure Claire described, but Noah pushed away the doubt. Claire's words echoed in his mind, shaping every observation into something sinister. Nights became sleepless marathons of planning and hesitation. He replayed possible scenarios, imagining how he might confront Mark, how he could protect Claire if things turned violent. The more he thought, the more entangled he became, as if her voice had rooted itself inside his thoughts. The line between concern and obsession blurred until he couldn't tell which was which. Each time his phone buzzed with another late-night message from Claire, the pull tightened. What had started as admiration now felt like a mission, one he wasn't sure he chose but couldn't seem to abandon, even as a small, uneasy voice inside him whispered that something about the entire story didn't add up. Noah's world narrowed to a single point, Claire's voice in his head and the plan he could barely admit to himself. Days blurred as he moved through school hallways in a fog, his attention fixed on every vibration of his phone. His friends noticed the change and tried to draw him back, but their questions only irritated him. He spent hours driving the streets of Pinewood after dark, headlights sweeping over empty sidewalks, rehearsing outcomes he couldn't clearly picture. Each mile felt like a step closer to something irreversible. Yet with every drive, the doubts grew stronger, curling like smoke around his thoughts. One evening, after another tense message from Claire about Mark's supposed cruelty, Noah parked near the Donnelly house and watched from the shadows. The quiet street was lined with tidy lawns and warm porch lights, nothing like the prison Claire described. Through a half-drawn curtain he saw her and Mark moving around the kitchen, their gestures casual, even affectionate. Mark leaned in to hand her a glass of wine, and she smiled, a soft, unguarded smile that didn't belong to someone living in fear. The sight jolted Noah, sending a cold rush through him. He stayed until the lights dimmed, staring at the ordinary domestic scene that clashed with every story she had told. The next day, he began to test the edges of her claims. He looked for signs of tension when Mark picked her up after work, but found none. Conversations with other teachers revealed that Mark was well liked in town, known for volunteering at a local shelter and coaching youth soccer. Each discovery unraveled a thread of the picture Claire had woven. The more he learned, the clearer it became that her version of events was carefully constructed to keep him on her side. Despite the growing realization, breaking free was not easy. Claire's late-night messages arrived with the same intensity, each one a mix of flattery and quiet pressure. She reminded him that he was brave, that no one else cared enough to help her. The words still tugged at him, but now they carried a different weight, like hooks. Instead of comfort, Noah began saving every message, every photo, creating a record of the manipulation he could no longer deny. The power she once held over him started to crack, replaced by a sharp awareness that he had been led towards something he never wanted, a crime disguised as love, a trap disguised as trust. Morning light crept across Noah's room as he sat at his desk, the phone in his hand heavy with evidence. He hadn't slept, replaying every message and photograph until his mind felt raw. The pieces now formed a pattern too clear to ignore. Claire had never been in danger, and he had been nothing more than a tool in her plan. Fear mixed with anger, sharpening his thoughts. If he stayed silent, the situation might twist into something worse. He pictured the police arriving for him instead, his name in headlines, his parents' stunned faces. The risk of doing nothing finally outweighed the fear of speaking out. By mid-morning, he walked into the Pinewood police station, a folder of printed screenshots clutched tightly. His voice trembled as he explained how the messages began with harmless compliments and escalated to explicit photos and subtle demands. The officers listened carefully, asking him to hand over his phone for a full review. They assured him he was not in trouble, that coming forward was the right choice. Relief flooded him, though it carried a sting of humiliation. Every secret message, every image he had hidden, now belonged to strangers who would piece together the truth. Investigators moved quickly. They confirmed that Mark Donnelly had no history of violence and found no sign of the abuse Claire described. Her carefully written stories unraveled under questioning. The messages she sent to Noah left little doubt about her intentions. She had sought to manipulate a teenager into harming her husband. Detectives obtained a warrant and arrested Claire during a school day, leading her out of the building as stunned students watched from classroom windows. The woman who once commanded admiration now faced a wall of cameras and flashing lights. News of the arrest spread through Pinewood in hours. Parents whispered in grocery store aisles, teachers exchanged shocked glances, and students scrolled through updates on their phones in disbelief. Mark, blindsided by the revelations, maintained a quiet dignity as he cooperated with the investigation. Claire was charged with solicitation of murder, child exploitation, and abuse of authority. For Noah, the aftermath was both freeing and painful. Counselors helped him untangle the guilt and confusion that lingered long after the case became headlines. He returned to school slowly, relearning how to trust his own judgment. The experience left a scar, but also a hard-earned awareness. Danger can wear a trusted face, and manipulation can feel like love until the mask finally falls away.